If I go out and the car is a flat, has a flat tire, and I'm supposed to go someplace, and if I don't get there, I've got 20 minutes to get there, and flat tire, I'm going to miss the plane, I'm going to miss this and that. We know what anger can be under those situations, huh? But it's idolatry. But it's idolatry. For I have now placed something higher. I have now placed something higher than the God who is the God of love and mercy, that I give my life over to whole heart, whole soul, whole mind, and who I am called to incarnate and magnify in this moment when the tire is flat, as well as in the moment of giving the talk, as well as in the moment of the I cannot have a 5-year plan on how to live a Christian life. Which 5-year plan is going to be without interference? I live in the world where constantly all the secondary goals remain open to frustration continually. There is nothing I can choose on a secondary level that can't be interfered with. If there is going to be an agapeistic life, then there is going to be an agapeistic life because I am not willing to let the frustration of secondary goals interfere with what is the primary reason for which I was called out of nothingness, to live and to magnify the life of God in order to overcome evil and death. There is no interference with the Christian life. Hence, in St. Paul's great hymn to love, if I have all the eloquence of people or angels and speak without love, etc., the second paragraph describes that love. And do you know what the description is? The first word that is employed to describe the nature of Christian love. Love is always patient. It is always patient, not because it doesn't care. It is always patient, not because secondary goals are not frustrated. It is always patient because here and now, regardless of whether I get out the door or not, I am called to love. Here and now. The only people that I can love, if I am going to love, are the people who are here and now. The only time I can love is now or never. It is now. To postpone love now in order to be able to love in the future is absolute spiritual folly. Absolute spiritual folly. It is the source in some fundamental way of all the troubles in Christianity, the justification of postponing loving now in order to love at some other moment in time. You either love now, you either love here, you either love these people, or you don't love in that unique moment in time and space. And nothing can interfere with that outside yourself. There is every reason to be patient, simply because, not because of an act of the will, simply because when the gum is stuck in the door and I can't get out, I am still capable of carrying out the primary reason for which I was drawn out of nothingness. It is not indifference to what's going on. It's a very large consciousness that to fail to love here because I can't love over here is exactly what's causing all the problems in the world. We will kill now so we can love later. So, the first fruit or consciousness that Paul describes of love is that it's patient and kind. Patient. Patience, my friends, is a time concept as well. Change of mind, metanoia, requires an alteration of our consciousness, our time consciousness, as a piece of it. We are nurtured in the time consciousness of corporate capitalism, which is a time consciousness of pragmatic efficiency, making the empirical world, the five senses, function in a particular way on a particular time schedule. Which is fine. The only point is, what happens when you have that consciousness, you set up goals, and you constantly are in a world where they cannot be met on time schedules. Not only goals like getting out, but like happiness and survival. There's an extraordinary book that was written on St. Francis that I haven't seen in any of the 800-year bibliographies that have been put out. Not one of them that I've seen. It's called The Last Christian by Adolf Holl. Extraordinary book. And what he points out, one of the things he points out is, St. Francis was born in the same decade that the clock came into existence. And that one of the great struggles that Francis was involved with was the issue of time and eternity. For time was beginning to get compartmentalized on the basis of the growing commercialism. People were beginning to be forced to function in time slots in order for commercial interests to be satisfied. They were becoming dehumanized. They were losing the sense of time being the passing image of eternity. And of course, their whole internal life was becoming terrible. For the use of time in a compartmentalized fashion was now becoming the goal. And it was constantly being frustrated, and so forth and so on. Whole institutions were being created around such concepts of time. But watch. And anyway, the point being, of course, you see what happens to time in the film? Did you notice that? Everyone notice that? The film goes, I think, 180 seconds altogether. Or whatever, 220, 240, was it? 240 seconds, 240 seconds. And when you reach the end of the film, if you had actually the first part of the film, if you had actually traveled the distance, how far would you have gone? You would have gone 100 million light years would have passed on Earth in the 240 seconds. 100 million years would have passed on Earth. Time is not this little compartmentalized thing. Even in the world of physics, it is known it is not that. And yet, how much of our existence, how much of our goals are set up by a compartmentalized sense of time? A total loss of eternity. A total loss of the whole nuance of time. Based on what? Based on the fact of commercialism. In this case, capitalism. Other case, communism. But based on the fact of a value system that is not agapeistic. Agape must be patient. Not that it must be by an act of the will, but because it has a whole different time consciousness. It rests with God now and always and forever and ever. It rests in God. It sees life, existence, as fundamentally manifesting the glory of this God, not as tasks that have to be worked out on certain time schedules or the world is going to go to hell. See? It's all different. It's not a matter of repressing anger. It's a matter of there's no reason to become angry, really. For nothing can interfere with God or you or carrying out the vocation. That doesn't mean there isn't pain. That doesn't mean that Somoza and the Sandinista are both not carrying out terrible, terrible pain, visiting terrible, terrible pain on each other. It doesn't mean there aren't people with cancer and children that die. It doesn't mean any of that. It means that all that takes place in the consciousness that God is going to abide forever. And God is not going to cease working until every last tear is wiped away. Or to put it another way, one of the finer mystics of the Western world, Julian of Norwich, says, all will be well, all will be well. In the end, all manner of things will be well. That's it. That doesn't mean it's going to happen without us. That doesn't mean that what we're doing is just play. What it does mean is that there's a God of everlasting love and mercy who is going to abide till all is well, till all is well, till all manner of things are well. Consciousness. And therefore, we know what we have to do in that process. This is our little humble part in it. Moment to moment, to live agapeistically in order to bring agape to the world in the little moment in time and space we're in. To not do it now does not mean I can't do it tomorrow or the next day. All it means is that it will never be done now. That my chance to overcome evil and death, to manifest God, to incarnate God, to incarnate and magnify the life that is God at this moment is now past. That's all. Nothing can interfere with my doing that but me. And therefore, the only thing that the Christian has to be careful of is, once this conscience is, that once this is perceived as the Christian life, as what we're called to and why we're called on nothingness, that we simply don't project out over here and say, this person is interfering with my living what I was called out of nothingness to live. It's him, it's her, it, they, who knows what. And so, there is great abandonment here, isn't there? There is an abandonment to a God. For to abandon oneself to the micro deeds of love, moment to moment, to the change of mind that is patient and kind always, to understand the Camus, we who are going to bring the rule of kindness to the world cannot ourselves be kind, to understand the tragedy in that, and that's just the opposite of what Christianity is saying. We must be kind moment to moment to moment. Live agapeistically moment to... That's great abandonment. Just give me one little chance at fear. Or this situation, this requires anger. This requires fear. This requires domination. I swear to you, they'll come up 1 trillion times. And the issue is, if you don't live agapeistically now, it will not be lived now. If you don't know God is present and incarnate the God who is love and mercy, now it won't be incarnated now. It may be incarnated, but it won't be incarnated now. And so, if there is any such thing as tragedy in life, and ultimately in the Christian life there is no tragedy, But if there is any such thing as tragedy in the Christian life, it is the fact that I was given a now to bring the life of God to. Mercy, love, to experience the presence and the glory of God in this place, in these things, and to give that experience to others, and I did not do it. For I can never go back. Possibly if there's tragedy, that is the only tragedy. A word about Mary. In the Oriental Church, Mary is not called the Blessed Mother. The single name that's given to Mary is Theotokos, which means God-bearer, which was the name that was given to her at the Council of Ephesus. And it was a name that fundamentally was given to her over an argument about Christ. Whether Mary was the mother of Christ or whether Mary was the mother of God. For the argument revolved around the fact of whether Christ was, not whether Christ was God, but whether Christ was truly human. That is, putting it another way, whether there was one person here or two persons here. Whether there was a person who was Jesus the human being and another person who was Jesus who was God. When Mary was given the title Theotokos, it was in response, or mother, God-bearer, Mother of God is the phrase we use to translate. Mother of God, it was in response to a Christological problem. Who was Jesus? Who was Jesus Christ? Mary was not defined in and of herself. Therefore, if one looks at the iconography of the Oriental Church, icons, the images, the paintings, the form, one never finds an icon of Mary by herself. There is no such thing. Why? Because Mary, if she has any kind of unique position in the communion of saints, it is because of her unique relationship to Jesus, who is God. She is the Mother of God. In the beginning was the Word was with God, the Word was God, all things were made through Him, without Him was nothing, and the Word became flesh. Now let us begin really looking at this in the sense of, first of all, if Jesus Christ is who we say He is, God, second person of the Blessed Trinity, the Son of God, the only begotten Son of God, if Jesus Christ is who He says He is, if we believe He is that, then let's be honest about it and say, Mary has an awesomely unique relationship to the divinity. For every human being only has one mother. That doesn't mean the relationship is better or worse than our relationship to God. It simply means it is unique. It is an unrepeatable thing. Jesus, if Jesus is God, cannot have two mothers. Secondly, the issue and the problem is the humanity of Jesus. That's the issue. Is Jesus totally human? The heresies in the church, starting with Docetism coming forward, that Jesus is God, but the appearance of human, not really human, the appearance of human. Which in something like today's epistle, should be clear. where it talks about Jesus being tempted in every way that we are. Temptation is temptation, not because it is clear that it's evil, not because it's clear it's what I don't want, it's because there's some attractiveness to it, which meant Jesus is nurtured like we are. It explicitly says he grew in wisdom and age and so forth. Huh? Jesus is human. Mary is human. We've got it. We've got it so fouled up. Father McKenzie says about Mary, you know, he says as he looks at Renaissance paintings of Mary and reads about Renaissance artists who painted Mary, that his feeling is that the Blessed Mother probably could have broken the arms and backs of every Renaissance artist that ever painted her. Simply because, he says, the people who come closest to living as Jesus lived, and therefore Mary, are Palestinian villages today. The strength that it takes to lift a 2-foot jar of water over your head 3 and 4 times a day and bring it to a cave, and bring it into a cave, which is where the Holy Family lived, if you will, huh? In a cave. That little picture of, you know, the little house with the checkered tablecloth and a microwave. Cave. They went in through a hole about that big, because that's where it was warm in the winter and cool in the summer in that world. A little room about the size of this, that's all. Cave. And to carry a 2-foot jar and to survive, huh? Mortality was incredible, huh? And to survive, this was a healthy woman. It's fine. What's wrong with that? What's wrong with that? She's human. She's a human being living in a human culture. She's like we are. And Jesus is her son. And she loved Jesus as a mother loves a son. And if Jesus is human, Jesus has a special relationship to her as mother. For he has never known a human life independent of her. From the first instance of human existence, God is with Mary. We know, for example, we call it, our native language, we call it a mother tongue. You know why? Because the imprint of the language is in the child's mind before the child is born. It comes through the mother using the language. The mother's voice is completely recognized before birth. The heartbeat of the mother is security to the child, even after birth. The mother's unique heartbeat. The child is the mother's flesh. Only on a human scale, only Mary can say, "This is my body, this is my blood." Jesus is the body and blood of Mary, explicitly, concretely, physically, which is interesting in terms of those folks that wish to talk about priesthood as symbol. The point being, Jesus is really human. I had someone say to me one time recently that he went on a retreat up in Nova Scotia to a monastery, I guess, up there. And the whole retreat was ruined. The whole retreat was ruined. This is someone that has spent 15 years with yoga, Christian yoga. The whole retreat was ruined. I mean, he was utterly disconcerted for 10 days of the retreat. Because the cross, the crucifixion was a naked Jesus. He couldn't get beyond it. That's how Jesus was crucified. Anything we do other than that is wrong. Absolutely wrong. We may do it for symbolic reasons, huh? Of course, which is what the Byzantine iconography is all about. There's not a single attempt to present realism. But if what we're trying to do is present realism and then we put a loincloth on Jesus, then that's the fruit of our own sinfulness. That's something else. That's the inability to recognize Jesus as human. Jesus is human. Human, human, human. When, as Mackenzie points out, the Palestinian villager, the person that Jesus, these are not yogis. These are not Hindu yogis. Their emotions are on the surface. Their anger is on the surface. Their love is on the surface. They are all body. Huh? The body becomes a total expression of the spirit moment to moment. If they are angry, if you live in that kind of world, and an Arab gets angry at you, you know an Arab is angry at you. I remember 16 years ago when I was in Damascus, and what I saw was, you know, men, not one or two, but hundreds, perhaps thousands in the days I was there, walking down the street, holding hands, huh? Touching each other and that sort of thing. And I'm thinking to myself, coming from Irish Catholic Boston, is this a society of homosexuals? Of course not, huh? It's just different, huh? The emotions are on the surface and they're expressed bodily. This is the world of Jesus. If he were kind, the kindness were expressed. It was out there in front. He was human, and therefore to be human is to be part of one culture at one time in one place. That's what we're nurtured. It is to overcome that culture. It is to live in that culture. But that is to be human. Jesus is a Jew of a particular region with a mother who loves him and whom he loves. It is a unique relationship. You do not love your mother like you love anyone else in the world. And if you are a mother, you love a child in a very, very particular sort of way. Intercessory prayer in terms of Mary is tied to that very human fact. If you wish to approach someone with a request, it is very, very human to approach that person through someone they love, in this case, mother. That's all. It's very human. Look, all the icons but one of Jesus is not of Mary. Not only do all the icons have Jesus, there is no icon of Mary without Jesus. But all the icons have Jesus with his eyes, with one exception, with the eyes looking towards the mother. Very human. And so, the point being that when one is dealing with intercessory prayer with Mary, one is not dealing with as if Mary were God. We already said we pray for Mary. She has to free. She's loved. She's like us. The issue is one is talking about human love. One is talking about Jesus being human, being the incarnation of love in the real human situation. I do not love my mother like I love my wife, period. The reason is she's my mother, and that is a unique situation. Love is always unique, depending upon the relationship. It's from uniqueness to uniqueness. That's all that's being said. But it seems to me that the issue is far more serious. Huh? For the issue, the trouble that people have with intercessory prayer with Mary is not that they think about the reality that most Byzantine altars, sanctuaries, at least half of them, have as the major icon right behind the altar an icon of Mary, which could be interpreted as Mary being adored like Christ, being a demigod kind of thing. What it is it's called the icon of the sign, and what it is, it's an icon of Mary, and her wound is open, and the child is being held there in the wound. And it comes from the Troporiya, the song for Christmas, which is, the lines from it are that are pertinent here, that the one whom the universe could not contain is contained in your womb. The one whom the universe could not contain is contained within your womb. It's a highly symbolic statement of the divinity and humanity of Christ. But the humanity, Christ lived in a womb for 9 months, and that's where we start. Everyone starts. Christ is human. Human, human, human. Prayer to Mary is simply recognizing that humanity. On the other hand, is the problem so much that, or is the problem with intercessory prayer to Mary or to anyone else, but let's say to Mary, is the problem not so much Mary or anything that's really thought about or studied about? For who has actually studied the theology of intercessory prayer in terms of Mary? But is the problem our own relationship with the community of the dead? That is, we don't believe they're there. Not Mary, not Jesus, and no one else. And therefore, why talk to air? In other words, if Christ is God, if Mary is the mother of Christ, the mother of God, there's something awesome here. For if Christ would eternally destroy his own mother, what hope is there for us? Either Mary's there or we're in trouble. Either Mary's there or we're not talking about a God of love. And so, I just thought that I'd raise the issue simply because, in the end, the fact is that Mary has no different vocation than any one of us have. Mary's vocation is to give life to God in this world, and that's our vocation. Mary's vocation was to magnify God in this world. My soul does magnify the Lord, the God of love and holiness. Mary's vocation was to enflesh God in this world, and that is what our vocation is also. And so, the issue, you know, is simply not our, we can say our vocation, all of us have a Marian vocation, huh? Or we can say Mary had a Christian vocation, however we want to put it. They're the same, what we're about. We do it in different ways, at different places, at different times. And indeed, since God loves us, since Christ loves us, indeed, his relationship to us is as unique as his relationship to his mother. For all love relationships are unique. Finally, and to conclude, this whole set of 2 workshops began with a reading from Matthew 25. And the reading from Matthew 25 the reading from Matthew 25 is the reading about, I was hungry, you gave me to eat, thirsty, you gave me to drink. And those did not see Christ, those who did not see Christ's pain, Christ's suffering, in the least of the brothers and sisters, what they didn't do to the least, they didn't do to Christ. And a judgment was called forth. There's a number of things we have to talk about in Matthew 25. The first one is to be very, very clear that the judgment that's talked about in Matthew 25 is not God judging us, but our judging ourselves. For let us be clear, hardness of heart has negative effects on the person who could be helped, for sure. But it also kills something in us. It also makes us different. For the Samaritan to walk by the Jew on the road indeed leaves the Jew in pain on the side of the road, it also makes him a little more cold, a little more cruel, a little harder in the rest of his existence. He has become something a little bit more callous, a little less human, if you will, a little less loving. And therefore, the person who walks by pain, relievable pain, who doesn't respond to it, doesn't work at responding to it, and so forth and so on, is simply creating his or her own pain, his or her own isolation, his or her own hell. Forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. Whatever you bind on earth should be bound in heaven. Whatever you loose on earth should be loosed, so forth. Of course it's true. Of course it's true. On the most fundamental spiritual level. Huh? If someone says, if someone is hurt and attacked, and someone continually says towards the person that hurt him or attacked him, he hurt me, he hurt me, he hurt me, he attacked me, she attacked me, she attacked me, she attacked me. If that keeps going on through the mind, you know what life becomes. It becomes dark. It becomes dark. I create my own hell. He stole from me, he stole from me, he stole from me. She talked about me, she talked about me, she talked about me. On and on and on. Huh? Becomes hell. Becomes a living hell. Fine, you're not forgiving the other person, but you're binding yourself pretty well too, huh? In darkness. In something other than happiness and joy. Don't want to forgive people? That's fine. You don't forgive people, but you pay a price for not forgiving. And the price is you live with the hurt and you intensify the hurt and you live off the hurt and so forth. And so, in Matthew 25, what we have is the notion of judgment in the sense that to simply refuse to love is to bring pain on oneself ultimately. Is the person who is callous in one institution in life going to be tender and gentle in another? Is life so divided and split up? It's one of the great arguments, for example, about in terms of not letting people go into military training who are Christian. Well, they go through 2 years of that viciousness and callousness and hatred and nurturing of enemy consciousness and so forth, and banging and hitting and stabbing, and they just leave it at the end of 2 years as if it never happened. It's them now. 2 years of nurturing and retaliation leads to forgiveness. Military training just doesn't put on the mind of Christ, and therefore no one should be in it as a Christian. It's clear. But the point is, what we do, we become. What we do, we become. To walk by pain here is to become more cold, more hard, less sensitive, less tender, less kind, less gentle. It's to know God a little less. To enter into mercy is to experience God a little more. As one views the enormity of the scene of pain in the world, it becomes a little difficult to feel that one can say, "Blessed is God at all times, now and always, and forever and ever." That one can praise God. In fact, I'd say it's psychologically impossible, except for the psychotically fearful, to praise a God who sits high above the scene of pain as kind of a casual observer. How can you praise such a God? Impossible. Doing nothing about it, just observing. One of the great heresies that was confronted in the early church was the iconoclastic heresy. And the iconoclastic heresy was the heresy that said that, and it went on for 100 and some years, I guess, was the heresy that said that all the icons, images of God should be taken out of the churches, statues, pictures, and so forth. Why? Because the first commandment says, you shall not make any graven images. God is spirit. You can't make any images of spirit. You can't have icons. You can't have images. The heresy, ultimately, as all these things are, was ultimately an attack on something fundamental in Christianity, which was the humanity of Jesus. That is, the heresy was decided, and the issue was ultimately decided on this point. It is true that one cannot make an image of God. Absolutely, positively true. This is impossible. God, in relation to sensual images, is totally transcendent. Totally. It is not possible. All images are false images of God. On the other hand, it is true that one can make an image of a human being. If God becomes human, then an image can be made of God if we are talking about one person, God, human and divine. We can make images of Jesus. Realistic, symbolic, anything we want. Anything we could do with any other human being, if Jesus is totally human, as the teaching was and is, then we can make images. And to make images of Jesus is to make an image of God. Jesus is totally human, is what the iconoclastic heresy is all about. Totally human. It is not possible for us to overemphasize that. For we have created a kind of monophysite Jesus in Christianity. Monophysite being that indeed what we are talking about here is basically Jesus is divine and occasionally becomes human. Jesus is totally human. He burps. Sorry, he burps. That's almost blasphemous with a certain kind of consciousness. But it is true. It is true. He is totally human. Body, he is human. And so, that being the case, that is what the incarnation is about. God becoming carnal. Love taking on a body. Love itself taking on a body. If Jesus is totally human, then Jesus has to take on those capacities that are human capacities in dynamics. One of those capacities is the capacity for compassion. That is, the capacity for having a common passion with other human beings, even if they're not known. For to see the Hiroshima Nagasaki movie or the Night and Fog movie about Auschwitz, none of us know those people. Those people are long dead. But the compassion, even for the dead, is there because they are like us. They breathe, they fear. They get specks of dust in their eye. They have toothaches. They have families, they have loves, they have failures. They have... Compassion is total, and to be human is to carry with us the capacity for compassion. It is indelibly implanted in the human spirit. Hitler. Hitler. Psychotic. Sexual pervert. Sadist. Masochist. And vegetarian. Well, I shouldn't say that. The point is, Hitler, in the bunker, deciding to kill himself. His world totally collapsed. Can one imagine what the mind would be of the person who stood in front of Nuremberg with hundreds of thousands cheering, and now is like a rat in a hole in a bunker and his whole world destroyed? Hitler. He's going to kill himself. And Eva Braun, who has been his sexual liaison for whatever it was, 12 years, 14 years, asked Hitler to marry her. And he does. Compassion. Compassion. No reason. No one's going to know. A mind, spirit totally destroyed. A person we call evil incarnate is asked to do something for someone that he cannot possibly get anything from, and he does it. Almost, from at least my outside perspective, a pure act of agape. The only point I want to make is we come as human beings, body, soul, and spirit, as a unity with the capacity for compassion. Therefore, all of us can forget for a time the scene of pain. All of us can douse and kill and nurture and just avoid living out of this dynamic of compassion for a time. And then every once in a while, even the worst of us, that is, those of us caught up in the worlds of professional sports and entertainment and, just all the things to distract, And we forget about the cancer wards, the lonely people in senior citizens' homes, and the one person that dies every 9 seconds of starvation, and the jails, and the on and on, We forget. Occasionally it just comes back, The hardest of hearts, it just comes back, the compassion. It's forgotten again. We can forget for a time other people's pain. For sure. We can forget for a long time other people's pain. But deep within the human psyche, deep in the fibers of the human being, he and she knows that he or she can never be at peace as long as another human being is in pain. Never, never, never. All the stupid stuff, I mean stupid, about my being everlastingly happy in heaven while my mother is in hell is such a distortion of what Christ was talking about. Such a distortion. How can that be? How can that be? Not if I'm body, soul, and spirit. Not if I'm me. Maybe if I'm a disembodied angel someplace that never had a mother. But not if I love. What do you do with love? Do you leave it at the grave? Is that the nature of Christian love? Or is the statement very clear? Love does not come to an end. 3 things last: faith, hope, and love. And the greatest of the love is eternal. If it's eternal, what do I do with it in heaven? Love to forget my mother in hell? What kind of God could you bless and praise if that were the case? And we all know, don't we? We all know that that kind of thinking has led to such things as people leaving hundreds of thousands, in some cases, of dollars. In one case, hundreds of thousands of dollars to have masses said every day for them. Kind of capitalistic Christianity. We will pay for the masses to take care of me. An atomistic moral Christianity. Just me. I am interested in my salvation. Remember the story I told you yesterday, huh? About the man that went home and killed his wife and children with a hatchet? How many people did evil to him and they don't know they did the evil to them that brought on the great evil? I once had a man come to me years ago who was at that point almost lost his job, was drinking heavily. He had killed a child in the car accident. But one morning he drove down a street. There were no cars on the street. The child was sitting on the street. He had 200 feet to stop, and he drove right over the child. Didn't even see the child. And of course, he was 5 years old or something like that. And his life went cuckoo after that. Absolutely, he lost everything. Couldn't think, couldn't concentrate, couldn't sleep, started drinking, despair, anger, everything. And after a long period, something finally came out which was extraordinary. Absolutely extraordinary. The night before he did that, he had a big argument with his daughter, who was graduating from high school. He was a good student and so forth, and who was going into a pre-med program at a state university outside Massachusetts. And the argument was that for months he had been hearing, and his wife had been hearing, stories about the daughter using drugs and being sexually promiscuous. For months. And he heard them from all kinds of different sources, and they couldn't be wrong. There's too many people talking about it. And he and the daughter had the argument, and they went on and on and on, and he accused the daughter of lying and so forth. She said it wasn't so, and on and on. And finally he told her that he simply was not going to pay for college. If she wanted to go to school, she had to live at home, and that meant starting at least a semester later and getting into pre-med programs and just problems. And it was a very, very, very bad scene. And the next morning when he was driving down that street, he was utterly preoccupied with it. Never, as we can be. We don't even see what's in front of us. Never, never saw the child in front of him until instant before or something. Now, through the funeral, the wake, and thereafter, it became clear that what was being done, what he and his wife had come in contact with, was gossip, as gossip perpetuates itself. Utter untruth, started by someone who simply was resentful, if you will, over the success of the daughter, an adult. Who is responsible for the death of that child? The man in the car or the person that started the gossip? Which of us knows the evil that we have started in this world? By slamming on a horn, by 1,001 other things. Who knows the evil they have set off? Who's going to go to confession and say, I have done this, 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 and this, and now thinks they have stated all the evil they have done? Nonsense. Or all the evil they have caused. Who? What kind of atomistic salvation is there? This is nonsense. We are in this as a human community. The evil we do, the evil that we initiate, can go out into generations. Can cause other people to do evil. Can give them a propensity to do evil. And we're going to go to heaven with a clean soul? We're going to go to heaven and let those go to hell who do evil. This is nonsense. This is nonsense. But that is what happens at the point that we lose sight of the fact that God has been incarnated in flesh, become human in the person of Jesus. For to be human is to be relegated or to be in the situation of never being able to be completely at peace while anyone is in pain. I do not know what the nature of God is in its essence. All I know of God is what I get through the revelation ultimately of Jesus. And that is, God is love. What I know of God is God has become human in Jesus Christ, and therefore God does not sit above the scene of human pain indifferently and can never do it. There is a pathetic side to the Christian God. The Christian God is a God of pathos, not just of glory. Because the Christian God is incarnate in a human body in Jesus Christ, and that means that as long as any human being is in pain, God suffers. Because every human being suffers as long as any human being is in pain. Matthew 25. When I was hungry, you gave me, thirsty, you gave me a drink, and so forth. Whatever you did to the least, you did to me. Look, if I am in the gutter, and I am in pain, and you come and help me, you're not helping Jesus Christ, you're helping me. I am me. You are helping me. So what is this business about relieving pain of me? You know what it is. To relieve the pain, for you to go out and to relieve this pain of some human being is simultaneously to relieve the pain of that person who loves that human being. For the mother watching the child die of diphtheria suffers not the same pain as diphtheria, but real deep, deep pain. Perhaps worse. To relieve the pain of the child is to relieve the pain of the mother. To relieve the pain of the beloved is to relieve the pain of the lover. That's what it's about. When God becomes human, God enters into the human dynamic of compassion. God enters into a human, divine love relationship with each. And so, when Pascal says, Christ remains nailed to the cross until the last tear is wiped away, do you know what that means? Christ remains nailed to the cross until the last tear is wiped away. God suffers until all are free of pain and tears and sighing. There is no peace for anyone ultimately until there is peace for everyone. If there is one, if every one of us, I mean, if all of us, the entire communion of saints, all who are, all that were, all who ever will be, if we are all in heaven with God, who is our brother, Jesus, if we are all in heaven with Jesus, and far out on the ends of the universe, There is one human being in pain. One human being in pain. Unloved, whatever. One human being in pain. There's no way that the whole communion of saints in heaven with God and Jesus can be at peace. The entire communion of saints would have to go. It's impossible. Impossible. Until the last person on the edge of the universe is free of the last drop of pain, there is no rest, there is no ultimate peace for any human being or for God. For God has now taken on the dynamics of compassion for sure. God is a suffering God as well as a God in glory. God, the God who is Jesus Christ, he who sees me sees the Father, the God who is the incarnation, Jesus who is the incarnation of God, the God who is agape, does not leave anyone to die like an eternal tramp on an eternal street. No one. Absolutely no one. When a mother gives birth, a mother does not give birth to a mortal being, but to an immortal being. A being that was drawn out of nothingness in love and who will be loved forever.